What I want to do tonight is something a bit different. The story writers and the storytellers are dotted around the room. I'm not going to introduce them. I'm not going to introduce the stories. The stories don't have titles necessarily. I want you to think a little bit more sort of Spotify. You might hear, a stream of 6 songs. Some you might like, some you might not. But nobody tells you what they were or who it is. And it's just a bit random, but you react. That's what I want. So we're facing each other. We're not facing a stage. Just listen to the stories as if you're listening to the radio. You can react after each one, but we're going to move through those 6. Then we'll have a little question and answer, and then we might actually have a sort of short story slam of our own, if anybody wants to stand up. So we're going to start, and yes, go ahead.
What's your name?
David.
David what?
David Roper.
Roper.
Yeah, sorry. So if you're happy, I'm going to start.
It wasn't hoarding, it was a form of survival. She could not appreciate that when she was younger, but she knew that now. Back then, the weight of her parents' possessions always felt too much. Stacks of rustling tartan-striped plastic bags loomed in colonized cupboards. The hastily stitched seams straining to contain shrunken clothes, lightly worn shoes, and tightly packed books and catalogues. The spare bedroom was the land of just in case. Once loved items never to be thrown away were kept in exile, waiting for reincarnation in another world back home. Old toys were squirreled away for countless unknown cousins, and brand new gadgets from Mappin were set aside and opened, ready to one day be shipped across oceans and prove useful for those who could not buy them in whatever provincial market they frequented. She understood it now. When you restart your life halfway across the world with nothing but a cheap suitcase filled with necessary items, everything you amass from that point on can feel some type of precious. These objects become symbolic of all that you have to show for your new life, estranged from everything else you once held dear. They fill the spaces meant to be inhabited by extended family and absorb the echoes that will be lost in laughed exchanges in your mother tongue. She now understood her parents' collections of disparate and mismatched objects, ephemera that represented an idea of what it meant to make a home here and thrive. But she was not them. They had both gone now. Neither of them could take any of their worldly possessions with them, so alongside a modest red brick terraced house, she had inherited 40 years worth of affirmations in the shape of bags and boxes and rooms full of abandoned belongings. It had taken the better half of the spring, the better half of 2 months to work her way through the mounds, methodically sorting the half-forgotten into piles for donation, recycling and landfill. If she was her mother, she would have a pile of things to sell too, which would be repatriated to a recently vacated corner. Her mother's resourceful intentions were always regulated to the elusive deadline of someday, but she was not her mother. So ritualistic trips were made to various charity shops, while every Tuesday morning the recycling and rubbish would be patiently waiting in their colour-coded refuse stacks with the low rumble of the garbage truck's approach. The squat little house now stood empty, completely empty for once in its colourful history. Even the good oak furniture and upholstered dining chairs had been loaded into rented vans by grateful freebie hunters who had staked their claim on a free cycling website. All that was left were the carpets, the embossed wallpaper, and the stippled ceilings. Although a few months of steady work, pulling up, pulling down, and sanding off would see to them. It would be backbreaking. And already she could taste the sweat that would collect on her top lip as she engaged in this solitary exercise. But still, it had to be done. In fact, it was a task she looked forward to. She looped and tied the last black bin bag before straightening up and crackling her knuckles against her waist. The bare interiors would be temporary. They had left her the house. Now, she would fill it.
him through the wet haze as he huddled under a blue sheet, eyes smiling at me, anticipating our dance. Twice in the last week, I caught him watching me as if he'd sprung from a crack in the bulging concrete, and twice I chased after him. With his feet hidden beneath the moving water, he looked like he had fallen with the rain, but I knew better. I knew he grew from the ground every time it rained this hard inside me. Between us, motorbikes churned through submerged lanes, and schoolboys splattered their socks and their mothers' hats. This time, I was going to make him see sense. I hurried down the mosque steps as the hot sweat from the sky masked my own rain. Inside, I had released into the quiet mosque readings which had floated to the dome and echoed down on locals unused to such foreign darkness. On my way out, I had counted 4 dirty looks. They were getting used to me. Dodging a bubbling puddle, I bumped into a little woman with a tourist-ready smile. She raised her left arm, and garlands of jasmine swayed between us, moist and plump. I took 1, then 2 more, and looped them over my blouse. I raised the flowers to my face and inhaled. My cloud burst, and I sobbed into the wet petals. The little woman patted me, fighting a chuckle, then embracing it, bending into the humor in her belly, holding on to me lest she collapse with my grief. I drew away from her and felt that pull again. There he was, still watching me drown. This time, he had seen too much. I ran. I raced until I ran out of panic and braced myself against a tree, the jasmine flowers still exhaling my mother's breath, aromatherapy for my bruised heart. A while later, shivering in the evening breeze, I straightened up and resolved to find the little woman. "Are you ready?" It was him. "I like it here, in Ho Chi Minh. I want to stay," I said. "You come this far east and you don't want to go to Australia?" I smiled. "Foolish girl, what have I told you about attachments?" He came closer, unraveling his blue sheet and wrapped it around my shoulders. Light zigzagged its way through my cloud. I felt its power and certainty wind through me and stitch me to the earth, a warm, glowing thread holding me together, showing off in my dark sky. My eyes closed. When I opened them, he was walking away. I followed him quickly and confidently, like miracles follow belief. He turned the corner on which 3 sacks of fried insects stood brown-headed and proud, and I lost him to bored housewives squeezing mangoes. I stayed where I was, shimmering, until the insect seller pushed crispy crickets under my nose, smelling salts from my unmoving body. "Not now," I whispered. "Not ever." For the next 3 weeks, I walked through the city, looking out for that shiny head, those penetrating eyes, and that sure walk. When the heat got the better of me, I would stop at a cafe serving mock freedom and pancakes to backpackers. I spent hours on its plastic chairs, squinting at the blurred lines of the one book, waiting for him to find me, but no rain came. The monsoons had moved on to drench other lands and hearts. Finally, one dry evening, my mobile rang. It was time. I wrote the day's date on the empty front page of my tattered, unread book. On the back, my mother had written, "Live!" And I had. Unlike the others, the many others who blew up, shriveled, and sank down. I had made it out of Syria, all the way to Vietnam, but now, PTSD chased me down with boozy deals, boat trips to Halong Bay in the north, where limestone islands with green afros floated in emerald waters. Miss, the water is calm, the touts comforted when I drew away from them. That's what others had told my mother, that those waters between Turkey and Greece were calm. I imagined their sales pitch. Children have made it, the elderly have made it. To the other side, to Greece, to the volcanic islands with green afros floating in emerald waters. You don't want to see your daughter again? I imagine Mom sank easily, then flew up like the others, somewhere to a private garden surrounded by jasmine flowers, her favorite. Meanwhile, down here, I was forced to live her wish to stay alive, forced to imagine her voice through motorbike farts in lean alleyways, remember her face through industrial fog, feel her through hot rain massaging my tight shoulders. I headed for the mosque as the dark alleyways filled with the call to prayer. Hurry to prayer! Hurry to success! The mosque, my mosque now, its familiar order of worship, straight lines, washed feet, bending backs and raised arms had been my sanctuary, my one unchanging, my refuge until tonight. Outside the mosque, a small tense group gathered. I sat away from them on the cool steps until his shadow fell into my lap. Come with me, I said. You know I have to go back. People need me to get them out of hell. But I thought you liked me, I said. Enough to know you need to go. Trauma makes the benign romantic. I have done what I can for you. Here's the passport. The girl, she looks just like you. You special lady, you get to fly to Australia. And the others, I asked, looking at the group. They will go by emerald waters.
Was at work when the phone on his desk rang. Your brother had some visitors and they took him away. A woman's voice whispered. The phone went dead. These words were the agreed code. They told Ramin that his brother Nader had been arrested again. Ramin went straight to his boss and told him that his brother had had an accident and that he had to go to Tehran to see him. The boss told him he was sorry and to take as much time off as he needed. On the coach from Rash to Tehran, Ramin remembered what Nader had told him about his first interrogation after coming back from exile. Why did you come to Tehran? Why didn't you stay in Rash with your family? I can teach in Tehran, privately. I couldn't find a job in Rash. Everywhere I went, they asked me for a security clearance from the Islamic Guards office. And why do you only look for teaching jobs? Can't you do other work? What kind of job do you want me to do? I'm a teacher. Teaching is just a cover for you to corrupt our children. Why did you ask us, the exiles, to come back if you don't trust us enough to let us work? Who are these us? Are you in touch with other returned exiles? going to get her, had then punched Nader about the head and stomach. It took 6 hours to get to Tehran. Ramin had a spare key to Nader's flat. He realized at once that the Islamic guards had left everything as it was. Even the computer was still there, and the books remained on the shelves. This was odd. They had always ransacked the place, and Nader had been arrested before. Ramin then went to the neighbors at number 8. Nader had told him to go and see the woman there if he was ever arrested again. Ramin was surprised to see that she was young and beautiful, and her eyes were red from weeping. She told him her name was Suraya and made tea for them both. He asked her what she knew of Nader's arrest, if there had been an argument or a scuffle, or if Nader had gone with the Islamic guards quietly. Suraya said there had been so many of them. They had just surrounded Nader. There was no way he could have escaped from them. There was something in Suraya's voice and manner that told Ramin that she and Nader had been in love. It pleased him, but also made him deeply sad. Ramin told Suraya he would go and search for his brother in all the prisons in Tehran. All of them denied having Nader in custody, but Ramin left his phone number with them anyway. Every evening he came back to Suraya's flat to tell her what had happened. They ate together and then sat and talked of Nader until Ramin went to his brother's flat to sleep. On the morning of the 5th day, just as Ramin was going out to search again, he got a phone call. He was told to go to the morgue to identify a body that had been found among the garbage outside Tehran. Suraya insisted on coming with him. The body was Nader's. It had been knifed about 30 times. That was usual when the body of some dissident or returned exile was found in the garbage. Outside, Suraya wept. Ramin told her he feared his parents would not be able to bear the news. She surprised him by telling him that he didn't have to tell them. He argued with her, explaining that they called Nader regularly, and if they didn't hear from him, they'd come to Tehran to see what the matter was. Ramin and Suraya walked together in silence to the coach station. They said farewell, and he went home to Rasht. He went straight into the courtyard, where he knew his parents would be. They looked at him, worried but hopeful. Without any hesitation, Ramin told his parents that Nader had fled the country again to escape arrest. Is that why you went to Tehran? Yes, father. You should have taken me with you to Tehran. I may never see him again now. I'm sorry, father, but it wasn't possible. Mother told me I had to come alone. His mother interrupted them, telling them that what mattered was that Nader was safe, and then she asked Ramin when he thought Nader would be able to call them. Ramin said he didn't know exactly, but he was sure Nader would call as soon as he got to Germany. 2 weeks later, Ramin phoned his parents, covering the mouthpiece with a piece of cloth. He said he was not there and asked them how they were. "You sound a bit muffled, Mother. Where are you?" his father shouted. "I'm in Germany like before, but not in a city. I'm in the countryside. The phone lines aren't so good here. I hope you're not angry with me, Father." I'm not angry with you at all. I want you to be safe and happy. Get work, find a wife, have children, flourish. I'll have all those things, Father. You know I love you and Mother, but please take care of yourselves. Don't worry about me. I'm fine here. Ramin put the phone down, wondering how long he could keep this visit up.
Dumpling, or a man, a woman, a vegetable, or a thing. A thought in 4 parts. Prologue. Once upon a time, on a hill far away but familiar, a man or a woman, a vegetable or a thing, built a home. It was tall but well proportioned, sturdy but elegantly so. All windows enjoyed a wide view of the sea. It stretched arms towards the world, but its roots clung deep and drew on local succulents. At night, stars winked down, and by day, rays warmed its hollows. Breezes painted the air with memories of far-off news, and in this world, this man or woman, vegetable or thing, went about their business. Business was birthed, nourished, and flung from this height. No one much noticed, though. No one saw, at this longitude, this latitude. Part 1. The Man. At another airport lounge with crappy Wi-Fi, a flight delayed, a connection missed, and business class on a short-haul flight doesn't help anything anyway. And why did he feel so far away from home? Okay, wait, that's overstating it a tad. From the apartment, that high-rise with a view of another block place where he could walk through the door and belly out breathe. Sometimes it took a takeaway and 5 episodes of... What do you like watching for hours on your sofa?
News.
The news?
Yes.
The news. The news on the sofa to get to that stage, but that's the way it goes, you know. Sometimes. He tapped his phone against the arm of the chair. A signal means nothing if no one sees. I could murder. What? It was a petulant hunger. You can't feed it if it doesn't have a name. A pie, comfort. A burger, dirty. A performance of elegance at the oyster bar. Inert, he sat put. Excuse me. What? Your bag's open and... Too late. Too difficult to retract to the city hostility which whipped from his face, reaching hers. It travelled with him past borders, comfortably. She looks kind. Maybe too late. A bad impression. Noodles. I want noodles. Part 2. The woman. That she kept steam rooms as a guilty pleasure. There was something seamy about them, don't you think? Something, I mean, how clean were they really? These rooms where we all of us change shape, blood rising. They reminded her of American Psycho, you know, games of squash, too thick leather sports bags. That kind of vanity and spending turned her on. She entered, and the steam took her in. Clock slowed and rewound to when time lumbered along uncertain, feeling the first land with its sticky first feet. And she liked this beading, this sweating, this flowing, pinkening till her cheeks were red for hours. Sometimes she stretched, keeping half a slit of an eye on the door, imagining tendons, sinews, bone and bristle, a fuzzy picture of what they were up to inside of her. In this room, she could do what she liked, as uglily as she liked. And she liked feeling like a dumpling. In winter, each time she pulled on a pair of tights, she thought, this is what it must feel like to be a sausage. No sausage was ever elegant. But here, small, clear streams sprang from her skin and travelled down her lines. She imagined herself a fine, translucent dumpling filled with fluid detail. I sit in the chamber of your mouth. Part 3. The vegetable. Walking home tonight, I saw something I can only describe as a giant fairy-light lit cucumber standing on its end at Trafalgar Square. It made me happy. I mean, why not have a festive vegetable in a public place? A cat may look at a king, and this beast of a bauble, aspiring to be a tree perhaps, stood not very far away from the fourth plinth. By the way, whenever anyone mentions the latest piece there, I murmur something generic, I picked up some dinner or drinks thing. Something dismissive enough to signal my disinterest, but smart enough to stand me in good stead. I will not be drawn into conversation about public art or public funding or what pigeons prefer. My mother used to make old cucumber soup, cooling, nutritious, and anti-aging. Ma, you always were practical. An unassuming broth. The old cucumber chunks would lurk, alien at the bottom of the bowl, heavy with wet. I enjoyed placing a biteful in my mouth, teasing flesh of woody skin. My tongue would wander. What will you grow into, friend, if let alone? I hurry on, a sudden longing for a sniff of warm oil and soy sauce, dark and sugary with promise. I guess my way through alleyways, find somewhere that sells me buns, hot pork secrets and fine bread, yam-purpled cases where salted eggs lie, and a bag of cool, silken soy, ginger syruped, coy, naughty for a man my age. Somewhere, Ma, I remember, cucumbers are fruits. I watched you shuck them off their seeds, and I have more freedom than I choose. Part 4. The thing. The thing is, excuse me. She touched the woman's arm lightly, unsure. Am I a threat? Am I threatening? Excuse me. Your bag's open and... The pace and weight of the city sometimes made her voice smaller than it really was. I loved hearing her talk. I would ask her open-ended questions and wait for her response, always considered. A famous actress once told her off for never finishing her sentences, not knowing that this would render her painfully silent for weeks in this noisy city. A city where you had to shout out your intentions or be so startlingly beautiful to even stand a chance of being seen. Anemone. she retracted, ashamed of her care, worried about the way she went about her business. We draw on local succulents. Excuse me, your bag's open and your wallet may be long gone, but I want you to know. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Fear never goes away, but care can swathe it.
The boy woke one morning and found that everything looked a little dark. He rubbed his eyes, arms heavy, and stretched to turn on his bedside light. It flickered on, but the light was dim. He blinked, but everything still looked so dull, as if all the colour had been drained out of his room. He took a closer look at the light, and noticed the dust settled on the lampshade. He hadn't seen it there before. He checked the clock on his bedside table. The sun should be up by now, he thought, puzzled. He got up and drew the curtains. The sun was up, but the low clouds seemed to be obscuring the view. What an awful dull day, he frowned as he walked to the bathroom door. The boy was standing in front of the bathroom mirror when he saw it. A little speck of dirt in the corner of his eye. He stopped and took a closer look. He rubbed his eyes, still it remained. He turned on the tap and splashed some water on his face, hoping to wash out the dirt, but it wouldn't budge. Oh dear, he thought. This is new. He called his friend. He was surprised to hear from the boy. His friend commented on the nice weather outside and asked if he wanted to come out. The boy looked out of his window at the grey expanse, confused. He told his friend about the dirt. I just feel rotten, he explained, like I could sleep for 1,000 years. When his friend tried to encourage him to come out, the boy told him that he was coming down with something and declined. I'm a little hungry, the boy thought. He rose from where he was sitting and went into the kitchen. He opened the fridge door but was underwhelmed by what was available to him. A half-empty carton of orange juice, some milk, which was perhaps a day or two out of date, 3 apples, and an unopened loaf of bread. The cupboard was not much better. I should do some shopping, he sighed. But the mere thought of walking to the shops at that moment exhausted him. Perhaps I will go tomorrow, he said, taking a swig from the carton of juice and putting 2 slices of bread in the toaster. For the rest of the day, the boy found himself restless. Every activity he tried confused or irritated him. Perhaps I just need to sleep this off, he thought. He tried to sleep, but found himself staring into the dark. When the boy woke the next morning, he expected to see everything back to normal. The same dull tones spread out before him. As he stepped into the bathroom and looked up at the mirror, he noticed it right away. The speck of dirt had grown in the light. He stared at his reflection closely, examining it, and then tried once again to dislodge it to no avail. He walked slowly to the living room. There he saw the plant his mother had given him on the shelf. Dead leaves lay all around it, and a thin layer of dust had settled on its droopy brown leaves. He had forgotten to water the plant for weeks. 2 cold slices of toast remained untouched in the toaster. He sat and listened to the ticking of the clock. A knock on the door brought the boy out of his reverie. He opened the door, squinting, his eyes struggling to adjust to the light outside. And there stood his friend. Hi, he said. Hey. The boy was torn between wanting to be alone and his desperation for human company. He almost sent his friend away, but decided against it. Whoa, said his friend, looking around the boy's neglected room. No wonder it's so dark. You need to open these curtains. The boy felt ashamed to have him here. He now wished he had not invited him in. His mind was not on the computer game they played, nor the conversation they were having. His friend was trying to be supportive, but it seemed he did not know how. The boy wanted to tell him what was wrong, but didn't know where to start. Between all the tiptoeing, he grew wary of his friend, and felt his friend growing wary of him. In fact, he felt quite relieved when his friend left. However, the boy also felt a small pang of disappointment. He so desperately wanted to talk, but there was no one in the world that he could talk to, and besides, what on earth would he say? Soon, questions, comments, and advice from various people came flooding in, most well-meaning, some not. But everybody gets dirt in their eyes sometimes. It'll pass. You just have to imagine it's bright, and it will be. Your hands still work, your legs still work. Some people don't have eyes, you know. You're upsetting your mother. He grew tired of trying to explain. He grew tired of speaking. He grew tired of thinking. He grew tired. The boy went to get ready for bed, but as he went to change into his pajamas, he realised that he hadn't actually changed out of them. The phone rang many times. He did not pick up. The phone stopped ringing. The boy had never felt so alone. He crawled into bed and cried for a long time. You see, the speck had now grown much bigger. It had spread across his body, settled on his bones and seeped into his heart and his lungs and his brain. So when he woke the next day, he could barely see anymore. When he tried to sit up in bed, his limbs were leaden. He closed his eyes and stayed very still. The boy woke in complete darkness. He didn't get out of bed that day, or the next. Whole week before, so I stayed inside, leaving once to report to the border agency and fill in some forms. I kept putting coins in the meter, but the flat was still cold. I saw the sun that morning and decided to eat out. I missed being surrounded by plants, lost in colours so sharp, so bright that they gave the greyest of days a cause for celebration. That was before the war though. Before they were covered in a fog so dense they couldn't be seen, and their scent was cloaked by blood and pain. Kew Gardens wasn't far from Richmond, and with my big coat and hat, I felt almost warm, but not quite. I'd been there for a while before I found the glass house. The humidity was engulfing, but not overwhelming. It wasn't exactly like home, but there was something familiar about being swathed in a heavy mist. I walked towards the concrete bridge ahead and started to take off my hat, when I noticed something small and white, catching the sun on its waxy leaves. I recognised it instantly and approached until it was an arm's length away. In all of the years that had passed, it found me again, and suddenly I was home, back to before things started. It called to me. Maybe one day things would be okay. I was the eldest of 4, but my father left. My sister and 2 brothers were born after me, one each year for my 5th birthday. That was the day my mother married my new father, my second father. He gave me a bag of sugarcane, which I took to eat by the ponds beyond the trees in the next town. I liked it there, in the thick bush. It was a good place to hide, lost in a sea of green, whilst watching the clouds drift by.
That's when I saw it floating there in the water. It was little, with pointed white petals. And before I had a chance to reach for it, the water lily bounced away on the stream's ripples. I did not call my second father Papa like they did. He was not my Papa, he was theirs. It wasn't until I was 17 that I found my real father, back in Africa after years in the Middle East. He was an Arab trader, and his fair skin was a currency in Rwanda. Because of him, I was loved. You're golden, the villagers would say. Golden like a treasure. To stand out means you can never blend in. I was different from my mother and siblings. I was not one of them. One day, when I was 11, I was walking home from school alone. On the cusp of puberty, the heat smothered my school shirt and my sweat was starting to smell. Sharp but sweet, like onions and syrup. Two older boys who were up ahead and walking my direction noticed me. I didn't recognise them. They were not children, but something about them was not quite grown. The taller one whistled. "Hello, Golden Princess," he called. The other one mimicked him obediently. I did not like their tone, but I didn't know why. Something about them made me angry and ashamed, like I wanted to disappear into my shirt, away from their eyes. I hadn't noticed before that the street was empty. I need to get home, I said. My mother is expecting me. "You'll get home, don't worry," said the taller one, releasing his grip but only when the other boy was up close behind me. I do have to get home, but you can walk with me if you like. I don't want my mother to be angry. It's not far, maybe just 10 minutes that way. On that walk we became acquainted. Pius, the taller one, was 16. The other, Fidel, was 17. They said they'd been heading to catch fish and smoke. They asked about my family, about school. They didn't take my virginity that day. I went back to the water many times over the years. The house was always full of people. There was no space for any quiet, not even at night. I shared a room with my siblings, and the boys would bicker and play fight. So often I took my homework there to my hiding place. Before I was expected home for my chores, I would sit with my books, looking out to the water, watching the lilies float by. The war broke out the year I turned 19. The president's plane shot down, and neighbours turned against each other overnight. I stopped going to the ponds the day I saw a body in the water, floated and rotting. The next time I saw Pius and Fidel, they had joined the Interahamwe. Soldiers broke into our home late at night. They dragged my stepfather outside and shot him. My two brothers were forced into the back of a van and driven off, and my mother, sister and I were left behind. "Take them, leave us the light one," Pius told the soldiers. He and Fidel dragged me into a room. They called me their golden treasure and laughed. Through the wall I heard screaming, then 2 gunshots, then silence. Only I survived.
Thank you. Those 6 stories were written by Jendella Brown, Firdos, Nasrin Parvez, Vera Clark, Vera Chok, I'm sorry. Vera's not here, so her friend read it for her. And Daphne Smith and Naida Redgrave. And they have, some of them have read before, and certainly most had not stood up. So please thank them again for that.
I just want to say thank you to our short story writers. I feel so thrilled. This has been brilliant. I feel emotional, I feel heavy. I want to go home and get writing, which I'm not going to do. Today has been absolutely thrilling. I've met so many amazing people. I've been working with an amazing team of volunteers who have helped us throughout the whole day. Thanks everyone to our audiences. I'm really excited to see you tomorrow, hopefully again, and have a great time. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
And before you go, thank you for David, David Draper from Heavy Entertainment, who mentored our writers, and a round of applause for him as well, please.